You know, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is now calling retail theft a national crisis, and that 54% of small business owners have experienced an increase in shoplifting last year, much of it stemming from organized crime. Joining us now to talk about this is Neil Bradley, Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Good morning. Thanks for talking with us this morning.
Good morning, Amy. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, so tell us how big of an issue retail theft is nationally, and then can you talk about what you're seeing here in the Houston area?
You know, absolutely. As you just mentioned, a majority of small business owners report that they've seen an increase in retail theft in their stores. We can actually quantify the dollar amount when we talk about larger retailers. For every $1 billion in sales, about $700,000 is lost to thefts these days. That's an increase of 50% in just the last 5 years. You know, our friends at the National Retail Federation have actually looked locally. Houston is in the top 10 in terms of organized retail crime last year. And so that means that folks in Houston are seeing more of these smash and grab jobs, more of these large theft rings, and that frankly, consumers there are suffering from the higher prices and the destruction that's being caused.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But first, I mean, you mentioned smash and grabs, and I wasn't even thinking about that as an organized theft ring, but it is. I mean, they're organized when they go in all together and sort of get in, get out. But I mean, I think a lot of these things go under the radar as far as the rest of consumers go, not seeing it because it might be organized sort of return fraud things. Are those type things included in retail theft that you guys are looking at?
Those are included in retail theft, and you know that has been kind of a consistent problem. You know, the old-fashioned shoplifting that we think about, you know, the teen who's trying to get away with something, or someone who's really in dire straits, or you know the return goods theft. But where we've really seen the increase is in what we call organized retail crime. These are just crime syndicates. It's the same thing like people dealing drugs, where you have crime rings, except now what they're doing is they're coming up with lists of goods that can be stolen. They're recruiting people to go into stores to steal these goods, and then they're selling them, often online, to unsuspecting consumers. And so this has really taken on an organized element of it. That's why the numbers have gotten so high. That's why this has become a national crisis.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously it's hurting the businesses who lose inventory and don't get paid for it. But I mean, how is it impacting our city and other people here individually, other customers?
Well, let's start with the most tragic story, which is the folks who work in these retail stores. You know, they get up and go to work and they're trying to do the best job they can. They didn't sign up to be a law enforcement officer. They didn't sign up to deal with folks who are coming in often and increasingly armed, trying to make away with as much goods as they possibly can. And so sadly, in various parts of the country, we are seeing a lot of these thefts turn violent. Now, for the rest of us, what it means is higher prices. We're paying for those stolen goods and the prices that we paid for everything else. You know, we just saw a national coffee chain close 16 stores across the country, not because they didn't have customer demand, not for any other reason other than crime was up and affecting those stores, and they couldn't operate them safely. That means people have lost their jobs who used to work in that store, and that means the local community no longer has the benefit of that coffee shop. We're seeing this replete all across the country.
I mean, so why? I mean, you said in the last 5 years, it certainly seems like we've seen an increase since the pandemic and since retailers and stores have opened back up. But why such an increase in such a pretty short period of time, do you think?
It's a confluence of things. First, over the course of the last decade plus, a lot of states have changed their laws, increasing the threshold by which someone gets prosecuted as a felony for theft. What we've seen is that these crime syndicates have recognized this. We literally have examples of thieves going in with calculators, calculating up the value of the stolen goods because they know if it's under the threshold, they won't get prosecuted. And so the pandemic also meant that the prosecutors had to choose what they were going after. And then there was basically this open sign that was put on retail theft that you could get away with it. That combined with online marketplaces, which have allowed these criminal syndicates to sell these goods, And frankly, the criminals got smart. They recognized where they could make money and where they could get away with it without being prosecuted, which is why we need Congress, our state legislators, and local officials to close these loopholes so that there's no place to sell the goods and so that the people who are doing this are prosecuted.
Yeah, it absolutely should not be the cost of doing business anywhere. It sounds like a national sort of problem for lawmakers to handle, but is there anything that states can do about it in Texas?
So absolutely, what we need and what we're seeing both Republican states and Democrat states do is what we call aggregation statutes. If someone is caught stealing a couple $100s worth of goods in the morning, and then they're caught again stealing somewhere else in the afternoon, and one more time that evening, rather than treating that as 3 separate offenses, none of which are prosecutable, aggregate it. When we know that individuals are part of these crime rings, let's treat it like organized crime and go after it. We've seen great changes in the laws in states like Illinois and Florida to go after these things. We'd like to see that in every state. And then Congress can help us by passing legislation that know your customer so that people can't sell these stolen goods anonymously in bulk online.
Geez, yeah, so then it's going to be the officers walking around with calculators to try to figure out this, they stole this in the morning and this in the afternoon. Where can people go to learn more about the problem and possible solutions?
Well, I hope folks will go to uschamber.com/retail theft. That's uschamber.com/retail theft. And you can learn about some of the solutions, but also what this is costing law-abiding citizens, what it's costing people there in Houston and across the nation.
All right. Thank you, Neil Bradley, Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It was good talking with you this morning.